But I did notice that there was just enough room to put the Crew-1 sticker up on.
Oh, here they come.
Here they come. The Crew-1 astronauts now beginning their journey to the launch pad ahead of this historic mission to the International Space Station.
Outside the ONC building, we have friends and family gathered there for final goodbyes prior to liftoff with our astronauts.
And that's a very different thing to the shuttle days. The last time we saw our families would have been at what we call the wave across the ditch, you know, the day before launch. And typically for shuttle launches, you would have employees and people that would come out to wish us well. I think it's a very special thing that the crew's families get that up close and personal right before they get into the crew transport vehicles to the pad.
You notice everyone keeping as a safe distance here, but that distance would be enforced regardless of whether COVID-19 was a factor in what's going on. That distance is maintained regardless. Like I mentioned before, there are 3 Teslas that will be taking our crew out. In the first car, we will have a closeout lead as well as a couple of suit technicians. The second car will be Mike Hopkins and Shannon Walker, as well as our flight surgeon. And then the last car, we will have Victor Glover and Soichi Noguchi, as well as one of our other closeout leads. So like I mentioned before, the suits are assigned, the seats in the capsule are assigned, as well as the seats in the Teslas. There's no fire drills happening here today.
Soichi.
You can hear just some ambient conversations between the crew and their immediate families. Such a special moment for them to have.
Very.
This crew has said a couple of times that Soichi is the funniest one of them all, and that comes out here.
Yeah, you can definitely see that.
Absolutely.
This is all very carefully choreographed. You can see, you see in one of the shots some of the ropes and stanchions, but there are lots of people involved in the planning of where the immediate families are going to stand, where the small contingent of media will stand, especially in COVID times where we have to make sure we're keeping the crew safe and their families safe. They were able to have a little extra time with their families yesterday because we moved off of yesterday as the launch day, so they had a little extra downtime that I imagine was nice for them.
Yeah, you mentioned that everything is very well choreographed. While this is the first time that we're seeing the crew make this journey to the pad on, the day of, fingers crossed we don't have a scrub. They have performed this a number of times, including a dry dress earlier this week. But everything that this crew does is rehearsed many, many times, whether it's putting the suits on or taking them off. Or even the operations and activities that they have going on during the mission. Everything is rehearsed and practiced.
I can tell you though, on the real day, feels a little different.
I have no doubt.
Immediate family members getting a chance to have another moment with the crew before they leave.
And then you'll see some of the folks there in the blue flight suits. Those are astronauts from the astronaut office active that are working as crew support astronauts for the families and the crew members. That's so awesome.
So I mentioned earlier that the Teslas that we utilized in our last crew mission, Demo 2, you can tell which Teslas those are because of the sticker in the lower passenger side front window.
I can't get a good read at the license plate this time, but I remember for Demo 2 they said ISS bound.
Yeah, that's good.
I think another one might say later Earth.
This is Core on countdown 1 for timeline. The crew is departing for the pad on schedule.
All right, so we just heard the call out from the core that the crew is departing for the pad, and they are right on schedule. Again, they are leaving the Neil Armstrong Operations and Checkout Building, now beginning a 20-minute ride, 20 minutes or so across NASA's Kennedy Space Center. They're going to drive right behind where we're sitting. We can't wait for that. And out to Launch Pad 39A. Now, there are scores of people around the world watching and cheering on these 4 souls, including many team members who helped get the crew here today. All right, the crew is continuing to make their way to Launch Pad 39A. We're at T-minus 3 hours and 3 minutes. So in about 8 minutes or so, we should hear the announcement of the crew arriving at the pad. Loved hearing those shout outs from those folks. I think that little girl was my favorite. But Nicole, I know the first time you saw that video, you got to see a lot of familiar faces from the astronaut corps.
Yeah, it's fun, you know. The other words I'll use a lot today are living vicariously. I can tell you every single one of the people in that picture were. It's pretty cool.
And now with the eyes of so many around the world watching, the crew is nearing their next milestone. At this point, the convoy is approaching Pad 39A and entering what is known as the BDA, or Blast Danger Area. Before any pad technicians, engineers, or astronauts enter this area around the launch pad, the SpaceX and NASA teams have to do internal go, no-go polls to make sure everything is clear and it's safe to approach.
This view that we have now, I just love it. This is the pad where humans went to the moon. This is Pad 39A, and originally built in the 1960s to support the Saturn V for the Apollo program. It was then upgraded to support the shuttle program. SpaceX signed the lease for it in 2014, made some upgrades ourselves. It might look a little different. We did remove the rotating service structure, but the heart, the bones of the fixed service structure from the shuttle days is still there. We made some modifications and safety improvements. You know, the salty air here can be quite corrosive, but
Sure.
As you know, something that is also a little different, the hangar that is built there allows us to do the integration much closer to the pad itself than in the shuttle and the shuttle and the Saturn V Apollo days. So it's really neat to see them. They're approaching now, driving up onto the pad, and I just love thinking about everything that has happened here and appreciate that we have the opportunity to continue human spaceflight from such a historic location.
Yeah, it really strikes me that the last time we saw this happening was, you know, back in the spring with Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley making this approach onto the pad, and we saw them kind of lean back after they got out of the cars, looking up to try to just take in the height and the grandeur of the pad, knowing that they were about to get on a rocket that was going to come to life. And now we have a full crew of 4, and it's just spectacular to know what is just around the corner for them.
Mm-hmm. From their standpoint, standing out there on the pad, they have to look up about 70 meters, considering everything that's holding the rocket up. And
I think that's part of the awe of it, though, too, is that you have to, I mean, you really have to kind of bend back. It's not easy to bend back in those suits and look up like that, but you wanna take it in a little bit. I know I heard Soichi earlier echo this sentiment that you get out to the pad on launch day, and it's absolutely like the vehicle is already alive, even before you take off. It's huffing and puffing a little bit, you know, a little bit of smoke or, you know, steam coming out of there, and it's ready to go as well. And I know I love what you're talking about too, Kate, with the transformation of the pad. You know, I think I was very fortunate to fly both times out of 39A on Discovery, and I don't know, on the one side you want the pad just to stay the way it was, you know, when
Yeah.
you went, but you know absolutely that as it's changing, that new opportunities are opening up. It's allowing us to get back to space on a new vehicle and, you know, look to the future
Absolutely.
of space exploration. I
Yeah.
mean, the pad has to change just like everything else does.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, the shuttle program was the spaceflight program of my childhood, and there's absolutely nostalgia associated with that service structure. And but you know, to see the transformation take place and to see all of the upgrades that have been incorporated, not only to allow Falcon 9 to fly from here, but also Falcon Heavy, is just, it's really mind-blowing in many ways.
Yeah. And for folks that may be wondering, the reason why we don't see the crew right now, we saw them pull up to the base of the pad. They have an opportunity for a bio break before they get into the elevator. That's, you know, something you can't overlook, important stop you have to make. So we're giving them a chance to do that. And then we will probably hear the official call out that the crew has arrived at the pad at T-minus 2:55. So that's coming up in about 3 minutes or so. And one other thing, Kate, for folks that maybe aren't familiar with the operational timeline for Falcon 9, there's no fuel in the rocket yet, right? That
Right.
process hasn't started yet. For Crew Dragon, it's a little bit different. But can you explain that process for folks who might not be familiar with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So in order to make sure that the 9 Merlin engines have the best performance possible, we wait as long as we can to
This is
begin.
Core on countdown 1 for timeline. All personnel have arrived at the pad on schedule.
All right, good call there, confirming that we are on schedule. So as I was saying, yeah, we want to make sure that the 9 Merlin engines have the best performance possible, and in order to do that, we use super densified, super chilled liquid oxygen. So the colder you get the liquid oxygen, the more of those oxygen molecules you can pack in. So we get better performance by having more oxidizer, and so we basically wait, and you know, in the larger timeline of things, it seems like last minute, but it's around the T-minus 35 minute mark that we will begin that prop loading on first and second stages with liquid oxygen and RP1, which is our rocket grade kerosene, basically.
You have better eyes than I do, Kate.
I think that might be Shannon. Yeah, I think that's Shannon
I'm
on
sorry,
the right.
Shannon, yeah.
Okay, Victor and Shannon. So they are getting inside the elevator.
Aw.
This is the same elevator Nicole's on.
Yes, it is.
So I mentioned before that we have something called the advanced team, and when I learned about this,
Okay, that's Mike and Shannon.
when I learned about the advanced team, they are responsible for, like I said before, making sure the hatch is open, the cabin has communications and lights. They're also responsible for making sure that someone has the elevator keys.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't just get in there.
Yeah,
You know, the devil's in the details.
for
Yeah.
sure. Now, when the astronauts ascend here, just as in the olden days, the levels of the tower are not marked 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. They are marked by foot height. So they press the 255-foot button and ride to the top.
Okay, and here's our first look at that level where they come out of the elevator. Now they're going to make their way around because they have a handful of stairs to climb to get up to the level where the crew access arm is. That's that long suspended walkway. So here they go up the steps.
Got to work for it.
Yeah, right. Well, they've made it this far. What's a couple more steps?
Oh, look how beautiful.
It's been a long time since I've had the privilege of being up there and seeing that view up in person, but it is just, words don't do it justice.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a view. You can see the NASA worm, and on the far end, that is where the phone is. Nicole, can you talk about the significance of the phone there?
Yeah, and I think they've maintained the same original phone, like
Yes.
the big handset, and it was one last opportunity to, call your family before loading up into the vehicle. And I don't know, I love that NASA and now NASA and SpaceX have maintained these personal touches to the humans that are part of human spaceflight. I think it's really, really important that we do those kinds of things.
And the one other thing that you'll notice are the white arrows pointing towards us on the camera, and that's not just for design. There's a very
Although it does
those
look
are very
cool.
it does look cool, but that they're very intentional. Okay, and so this will be Victor and Soichi
Yeah.
now approaching the pad. So Mike and Shannon got a head start. Victor and Soichi are making their way to the elevator now. I wonder if they're going to stop and
Oh, they got it.
strain, or maybe they've already done that to get a look up.
Here they go. It's kind of like the pre-flight, right? The walk around your vehicle before you get in and fly.
Yeah, I feel like this one carries a little more weight.
Yeah. Yeah. Incredible.
I really want to come up with a name for the move that they have to do when they turn and bend and look back.
Yeah. It's the don't fall backwards move.
Yeah.
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 And you know, we're having a lot of fun here. We know the crew is having a blast. There they
There it
they
is.
are.
Again.
I knew they were going to do it. But you know, this is they must have so much adrenaline pumping through them, because you know when you are getting on top of a rocket, your life is at stake. And that's not something that any of the people involved in this mission from start to finish take for granted or take lightly. The folks who work on this program take that responsibility to heart. And like you said, Nicole, I mean, when you're talking about the relationships with the people in the suit-up room, they have those relationships with people across the NASA and SpaceX teams. They walk the factory floor in Hawthorne, and the people that work this mission, they know the astronauts and they see them as their own family. Here's a look inside the crew access arm from the inside.
I love this shot.
Yeah.
You know, when this was being designed, it was definitely a forward-thinking design that we went with. We really wanted it to encapsulate the experience of the next era of spaceflight, really wanting to make it look futuristic, as with the suits and the capsule itself. Very sleek and elegant.
Okay, so here's Victor and Soichi. The last shot inside the access arm was Mike and Shannon. So they're standing now inside the white room. We're going to explain a little bit more about that in a minute, but you can see the side hatch of Dragon open, and that is where they are going to ingress or climb inside in about 13 minutes if things are on schedule.
Yeah.
They're signing the wall there. Kate, can you explain what they're doing there with the
Yes.
signatures?
On
So we
countdown
just
one
saw
for
Mike's.
timeline. The crew has arrived at the White Room on schedule.
All right, good core call there. Just notifying everyone that the crew has arrived on time. We now see Shannon adding her signature to the wall. So in keeping with tradition, we painted this room white, and the advanced team, once again, I'll talk about them. Part of their responsibility, also making sure that there's a Sharpie on hand so that crew members can add their names to our signature wall. Bob and Doug did this prior to their flight, and I love that this is really the last thing you do before you get in our spaceship. I just love that there's an opportunity, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the list of names grow over time.
It's going to be spectacular to see. Well, you know, if everything goes as planned, we'll have the next group of 4 signing their names there in the spring with Crew 2.
Mm-hmm.
And on Crew 2, one of your crew members will be, you know, Megan MacArthur-Bankin, wife of Bob, who flew DM2.
You know, they are my definition of a power couple, and I'm
say.
here for it. I love it. I'm really excited to see what the seat assignments will be, because it'd be really cool if she was sitting in the same position as he was inside the capsule for her mission.
Oh, there's a wave.
Yeah.
This is so exciting for Soichi, and I know he has some extended family who couldn't be here in Florida for the launch, but hopefully they're getting the opportunity to watch from Japan. And I'm trying to think of what time it is there now. It's early Monday morning, so if they set their alarm clocks early enough, they'll have a chance to.
Oh, I'm
to
sure they
watch.
are.
Yeah.
So I think at this point in time, Victor is making that last family phone call.
And Kate, we started to talk about the arrows, and then hi. I feel like he's watching us.
Well, you know, that's so awesome that he's doing that, because I think we had talked about this once before, where in the White Room before, Because with shuttle, we didn't have that like last meet and greet kind of thing at the ONC before getting in the vehicles. We knew the cameras were there, we knew our families were watching, and we would do like little secret hand signals to our, our spouses and kids, and they'd know it was coming. You couldn't say anything, but you could do the little love you thing.
Sign language, yeah. But the arrows, I know you can't see them on the screen right now, but we've mentioned them a couple times. Those are for emergency egress. If for any reason the crew had to get out of the capsule, get out of the white room, and get away from the pad in a hurry, that is the arrows that show them go this way, essentially.
And you need something like that because, depending on the situation, you might actually have some smoke or the water deluge system going. And so you tip your head down, you look at the floor, you grab each other and go.
Yeah, and if we were to do a quick exit from the tower, we utilize basically baskets that are on zip lines and they slide down the wire to safety.
And you can see on your screen the crew beginning the ingress process already. So our timeline has this happening at T-minus 2 hours and 35 minutes. So it looks like they may just be starting that a little bit early. There are, of course, 4 astronauts who have to ingress. So this doesn't happen in an instant. It's a process, but obviously that process has begun.
So we see some of the suit technicians there assisting them to get into their seat, making sure that the boots are able to lock into position on the footrest appropriately, making sure once again that all the zippers are in the right place, and making sure that we're able to do all the checkouts necessary, both in terms of environmental controls, but also communication audio as well.
And I wasn't sure, do we have Mike and Shannon already inside? Okay,
Yeah,
so
they're
Mike and
both in
Shannon
there.
are already inside, and Victor and Soichi have not made their way into the white room yet. They're finishing up their phone calls. And so again, crew ingress is just a spaceflight term for getting inside the spacecraft. So Mike Hopkins and Shannon Walker have ingressed Crew Dragon. You can see the bottom of one of their legs inside the open hatch there. And Victor Glover and Soichi Noguchi looks like are now making their way. They're starting to move. They will be walking down the crew access arm. There's the outside of it, so they're making their way down that hallway as we speak, and they'll be stopping in the white room in just a moment.
It's hard to see in that shot, but I'm very happy to say that we got blue skies and a couple of puffy white clouds working with us. So while it might look a little overcast on the screen, we're pretty happy with what we've got at the moment.
And you can see the little shadows of them moving along through the windows into the white room. Almost there.
Okay, there they are. So this is, again, a look inside the white room. It's not a very big space. It's pretty tight, but that's by design. Okay, so while Victor and Soichi are getting a chance to sign their names to the inside of the white room, we want to recap just a little bit. If you're just joining us, you're watching live coverage of NASA's SpaceX Crew-1 mission, today sending 4 astronauts into orbit on a mission to the International Space Station. NASA astronauts Victor Glover, Mike Hopkins, Shannon Walker, and Soichi Noguchi are flying on a 6-month mission to the International Space Station. Good afternoon and welcome to Kennedy Space Center in Florida. I'm Marie Lewis, Public Affairs Officer for NASA.
And I'm Kate Tice, Senior Certification Engineer at SpaceX. Happy to be bringing you live coverage of the Crew-1 mission from Kennedy Space Center. Joining us is retired NASA astronaut Nicole Stott, who has flown twice on the shuttle, so pretty exciting to have you here with us. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Very nice to be here today with you ladies.
And again, the crew has already arrived at pad 39A, where a Falcon 9 will lift off from 7:27 p.m. Eastern, and Victor Glover and Soichi Noguchi are standing inside the White Room. Mike Hopkins and Shannon Walker are already inside Crew Dragon.
Yeah, so it looks like we're fitting up the earpieces now and just doing a couple final checks. They have ascended the tall structure next to the rocket, known as the fixed service structure, and they've walked down that futuristic-looking corridor known as the crew access arm.
And so now they are about halfway through the process of boarding Dragon, so it looks like possibly a little bit ahead of schedule. Our crew members, they're making their final stop. Again, this is the White Room, and the White Room is this small space at the end of the crew access arm that provides entry into Crew Dragon. And as Kate mentioned earlier, this is the last place the crew will be on Earth before stepping into the spacecraft for their ride to the International Space Station.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, the term White Room it has a little bit of history. It was first used during the NASA Gemini missions, where the room right before entering into the spacecraft was painted white. So we love traditions when we've continued this one by painting ours white as well. Like Marie said, it is a pretty small area, and it has just enough room for the crew and a couple of ground support members to allow them to complete late cargo load at T-minus 24 hours. And then, of course, what we were just witnessing, crew ingress, running a little bit ahead of schedule at T-minus 39 minutes, 2 hours and 39 minutes. And ingress is how we refer to boarding on top of Crew Dragon.
Now inside the White Room where we're looking, there is a movable platform that gets extended out to the capsule, and that helps bridge the gap between the crew access arm and the Dragon side hatch. And this allows for easy entry into the spacecraft. As you might expect, it's environmentally controlled so that the Dragon side hatch can be opened, while at the same time keeping dust, dirt, that nasty Florida humidity out of the capsule to make sure it is just in pristine condition for the crew. There is also a large seal that gets inflated and compressed against the capsule to make sure that we can maintain these clean environments.
Yeah, so this is all really exciting to watch. Like I mentioned, you saw them take part in that tradition that we've mentioned a couple of times and it began with our Demo 2 crew of NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley. They signed the wall of the room to mark that they are now part of the select few who will have launched after leaving this room. So the White Room also has lots of other tools that are utilized in order to open the side hatch and complete crew ingress, as well as allowing them to prepare for any contingency or emergency that might be encountered. So as we're waiting for our last crew member to hop inside Crew Dragon, let's check back in with Jesse and Leah back at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. How's it going over there, Jesse?
Completing that FOD check. And once the FOD check is complete, Mike Hopkins, our commander, first ingressed, and then Shannon Walker, Soichi Noguchi, and now we are waiting for Victor Glover, actually watching him enter the vehicle right now. And they're now getting buckled in and attaching their umbilicals to their suits. The suit techs are there helping if as needed. The umbilicals allow the crew to have comms through their suit, air to help keep them cool, as well as delivers nitrox for suit pressurization. And as we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, the suit's primary function is to protect the crew in the event of a cabin depressurization.
I love this view inside Crew Dragon, and as you saw, there are 4 seats configured right now, and they're numbered 1 to 4 from right to left when you're looking at the seats. Mike Hopkins is in seat 2, that's the commander's seat, and then Victor Glover will be beside him in seat 3. That for Crew Dragon is the pilot seat. Soichi Noguchi is in seat 1, and Shannon Walker is in seat 4. Now directly in front of them, which you can see here, are 3 displays which they'll use throughout the flight, getting insight into Dragon systems, seeing any alerts or issues with the vehicle, and if required, they can take control and manually fly Dragon.
And coming up, the crew will do a comm check to make sure that they can hear mission control, and then their seats will be rotated into position for launch. But right now, they are finishing getting buckled in, and getting their suits connected to those custom seats.
Some of those things to listen for when we're doing those comm checks. They'll be doing comm checks through multiple paths to Dragon. They'll do some through TDRS, that's our tracking data and relay satellite system. We also use that for communications with the International Space Station. And then they'll also, you'll hear ground, that refers to several ground stations around the globe that SpaceX had. And upon liftoff, those ground stations will be able to provide telemetry from Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon. There's also about a half a dozen checks to ensure everybody's ready in here. You can see those suit up crew. I've heard people call them the ninjas before. I think it's a pretty apt name, but they are checking to make sure the suits are ready. They're helping them connect the umbilicals. They're buckling them in. They're also assisting with those leak and comm checks. So they each have a very individual and specific role. And we just stepped through this a couple of days ago for the dry dress. Every single detail, we stepped through it, from buckling up to connecting the umbilicals, even the comm checks. So it's kind of like run 2,
Right.
but really day 1.
Little deja vu, but it's all very, very organized. Doing the practice runs helps make sure. This helps make sure that, you know, everything goes smoothly on the day of launch, like today. It looks like almost everybody's all buckled in, just finishing up with Victor. Comm check should occur once everybody's already buckled in, so.
A lot of excitement. Really cool to see 4 crew members. Just saw a wave from Shannon there in that far left seat.
Okay, so while we were in that video, we saw the hatch close. We have not heard the confirmation of the hatch close. We're not expecting that until T-minus 1 hour and 55 minutes. So we're still almost 10 minutes away from that. But even though the hatch appears to be closed, there's a process to completing this and making sure that it's sealed and there's no leaking. So Kate, can you kind of explain what the crew is doing now during this hatch closure process?
Yeah, for sure. So like Marie said, it's not quite as simple as closing your car door. Of course, they're having to make sure that everything is in place. There will actually be a seal that is inflated to ensure that all of the, basically that it is watertight. If it's watertight, it'll get to space. So we see the crew, the closeout techs, the suit techs, all there in their numbered uniforms going through the steps. You can see the tablets in their hands. Those are our electronic procedures or e-procedures, and they are essentially stepping through each one to make sure that, and giving verbal cues saying that is complete, we are good, and we're basically just counting through the process step by step, getting closer to launch time, which at this point we're just a mere 2 hours and 3 minutes away from.
Nicole, what was it like when you were sitting inside the space shuttle when that moment when, you know, that last door to the outside closed?
You know, I think it's like all the steps we've been talking along the way. It's another one of those, wow, this could be real today steps. And that is certainly one that makes you think it's going to happen. You're at that point, you know the closeout crew is getting ready to depart the pad shortly, and you know that you're going to be out there on your own with your crew waiting to go.
Mm-hmm.
And go ahead for the side hatch leak check.
Okay, good news. The leak check has passed, and we saw consistent readings to what we saw on dry dress. So it looks good.
That's great news, SpaceX.
So what you just heard there was the core team briefing the crew, letting them know that the leak check passed, and we're going to be moving along in the timeline here. They're now attaching the final exterior cover there on the side hatch.
And they mentioned that the levels that they checked were consistent with dry dress. They were referring to the rehearsal that was conducted Thursday. So just a couple of days ago, they went through this process. It's called the dry dress rehearsal because they do everything except fuel up the rocket and, of course, launch. So when they did the checks that day, obviously things were nominal. The first time they closed the side hatch, they noticed a drop in pressure when they did the leak check. So they opened the hatch back up, discovered some foreign object debris, or what we call FOD, cleared that out. We don't know what exactly it was yet. We might hear about that in the post-ingress briefing. But they closed the hatch back up, did another leak check. Everything looks nominal, and that's what we just heard confirmation of. So that they said that was great news. So it sounds like we're getting back on track now.
So it looked like that closeout team member just took the final closeout photo there, or one of final, and we are moving along. If you look closely on the right-hand side, you might be able to make out some signatures there on the wall of our white room.
And certainly the astronauts sitting inside the Crew Dragon capsule right now appreciate the attention to detail of this pad closeout team.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Marie, it's interesting. I think one of the things we definitely appreciate is that the team that works here with us on these spacecraft absolutely believe that the care and feeding of those spacecraft is their responsibility. And we know that. You can tell as they're working with you and hear them outside the hatch and on the radio as well.
Now, Kate, can you explain what we're seeing now?
It's a little difficult for me to see on the screen. I'm sorry, I can't tell what they're doing.
It is a little off, you know, it's above the frame of the camera view that we can see.
Are there things they have to remove before the seal with the hatch can pull back?
No, there's nothing necessarily attached to the capsule, but I would like to point out, again, we're not only taking into consideration the safety of the crew, but the safety of our team members as well. You can see the straps there. I believe what they're doing is they're basically allowing, so there's a mechanism there on the crew access arm. There's kind of like an airplane door. It doesn't, the metallic pieces don't go anywhere near close to the airplane, but there's a little bit of a seal there to try and control the environment. Again, dealing with humidity and rain and bugs here in Florida, trying to keep all of that out and keep the environment stable and under control there. But yeah, so they are now preparing to move all of that fixturing away, and they are leaning out over towards essentially the side of the rocket. So we have those wires in place for fall protection.
So we should be hearing any time now a post-ingress briefing. That's what we're expecting for the crew inside to kind of get a recap. Okay, so maybe a couple more minutes before we hear that briefing. So we're going to move on temporarily. We've made mention of the first crew to launch in Crew Dragon a little earlier this year. And you may remember them as the Space Dads, as they are affectionately known by the NASA and SpaceX teams who work with them. We watched them lift off from this very spot back in May, ending a 9-year gap in human spaceflight from American soil. And we want to honor the courage of NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley with a look at their historic Demo 2 test flight. I only caught the tail end of that, but it sounded like the launch escape system is armed.
So now the launch escape system is armed. Essentially, this is the system that all the way from now on the pad until they are in orbit, the crew would be able to escape safely in the event of an anomaly. That's why it is so important that we check the weather all around the world, really. It's not just the weather here at the Cape that we're looking at in order to determine if we're go or no go. It is the weather along that entire escape corridor.
Right. And as Kate was mentioning, again, the launch escape system is armed. That has to happen before the SpaceX teams will proceed with fueling Falcon 9. And so that propellant loading process is set to begin at T-minus 35 minutes, so just a few minutes from now. And what that looks like, Kate, you talked about the tests that were done. You did a pad abort test back in 2015. You did an in-flight abort test at the beginning of this year. And so what that looks like in action, if it were to happen, a pad abort test, or excuse me, a pad abort would be before liftoff at any point from propellant loading, which begins in just under 3 minutes now, until the moment of liftoff. If something were to go wrong and the crew were in danger, Crew Dragon can kind of act as a rocket on top of a rocket and propel itself off of Falcon 9 using its 8 built-in Super Draco thrusters, right? And so the idea is that if that happens, Crew Dragon would splash down off the coast, and then we would have a rescue scenario.
Correct.
And so we've rehearsed that ahead of time. We coordinate very closely, the NASA and SpaceX teams, with the Department of Defense Detachment 3 to prepare for a scenario such as that. We're also prepared for if there were to be a need for a launch escape after the point of liftoff, at any point from liftoff until they reach orbit, about roughly 12 minutes after liftoff. At any point in that sequence, Crew Dragon could still launch itself off of the Falcon 9 rocket. And in that scenario, Crew Dragon would splash down at some other location further downrange, farther away from Florida, obviously. And that's why the weather downrange is just as important as the weather around the pad for liftoff, because they're thinking about how are we going to rescue the crew if we get into a scenario like that.
Exactly. So it's really complicated, but it is a system that we have spent a lot of time designing and testing, and it's definitely something to consider in terms of that weather criteria that we do look at.
Dragon is in configure for terminal count. Dragon is on internal power. Falcon 9 propellant tanks are pressurizing for strong back retract.
Good confirmation that Dragon is on internal power. And now we'll be looking for a major milestone before we launch today. That'll be the strong back retract. John, you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Leah, if we get a close-up of the Dragon at second stage.
Strong back is retracting.
We've heard the call out, strong back retracting. That's a two-step sequence. First, there are clamp arms around the very top of the second stage. You can see one of them just above the gaseous oxygen vapors coming out of the second stage. Those arms will open up, and then just inside of T-minus 4 minutes, once the arms are released, we'll begin to retract the strong back alongside the vehicle. It'll move back 2 degrees in position, and by about T-minus 3.5 minutes, we ought to be finished with that. The strong back will retract to 45 degrees away from the rocket once we hit T0 as part of the liftoff sequence.
And at T-minus 3 minutes,
Right now we're waiting for the retract. And there you can see the strong back is beginning to move away from the vehicle. And it looks like we are just about into the required pre-launch position, just a couple degrees away from the Falcon 9 and the Dragon capsule. But right now, T-minus 3 minutes, 8 seconds, everything continues to be go on Dragon and Falcon 9.
Currently standing.
Dragon is in terminal count.
And Dragon is in terminal count, and we are standing by to hear that stage 1 liquid oxygen loading is complete. Stage 2
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
And there we have it, and stage 2 should finish shortly after at about 2 minutes prior to liftoff.
So now the last major event is finish liquid oxygen loading on stage 2. Wraps up at about T-minus 2 minutes. Then at about T-minus a minute and a half, we have to drain back and vent down the liquid line that goes up the strong back alongside the Falcon 9. If you see a large white cloud about midway down around the rocket, that's normal. That's again just the gaseous oxygen hitting the warm, moist Florida air.
Stage 2 lock float is complete. Dragon is in auto idle.
And good calls that stage 2 liquid oxygen load is complete. That means we have full fuel on the first and second stages, that densified kerosene, and we're full of the oxidizer.
Starting.
Liquid oxygen on the first and second stage as well. Now just a minute and 20 seconds until liftoff today. And as you can hear those sounds, like Soichi Noguchi said, the vehicle is alive. Coming up in 10 seconds, we'll look to hear that Dragon is in countdown and Falcon 9 is in startup.
Dragon is in countdown. FTS is armed. Falcon 9 is in startup and is now controlling.
50 seconds now until liftoff. That FTS you heard is flight termination.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch.
SpaceX, this is Resilient. Roger, go.
Go for launch, and at 37 seconds, the International Space Station flying over Kennedy Space Center.
All for one, Crew 1 for all.
Crew Dragon poised to go catch it. 20 seconds till liftoff.
T-minus 15 seconds. Falcon 9 is configured for flight. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
And resilience rises. Not even gravity contains humanity when we explore as one for all.
M1E propulsion is nominal.
That's the word we want to hear. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Just 30 seconds into this historic mission, flying crew on board Dragon and Falcon 9. Stage 1 is preparing to throttle down. This is in preparation for max Q, which is maximum aerodynamic pressure.
Stage 1, throttle down.
There's that call out for throttle down.
Power and telemetry continue to be nominal for the vehicle, now traveling at 262 meters per second.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
There's that call out. The Falcon 9 is supersonic, and we will be passing through max Q here shortly, the largest structural load during ascent.
Max Q.
There's that call out. That Falcon has passed through
Stage
max
1,
Q.
throttle up.
1 Bravo.
And we've just entered Stage 1 Bravo abort mode. That's going to take them through the end of the first stage burning just before second stage activates off the coast of North Carolina. T plus 1 minute and 40 seconds into flight. Dragon and Falcon 9 traveling 709 meters per second. That call that MVAC chill is underway, the Merlin vacuum engine.
Now with the call out of MVAC-D chillin, similar to what we saw in the first stage Merlin engines, the second stage engine being prepared for its ignition coming up in just over 30 seconds from now. We're a half a minute away from 3 quick events in rapid succession. We're going to get main engine cut off. The 9 Merlin engines will throttle down and then shut down. We're going to get stage separation.
Stage 1, throttle down.
And then ignition of the second stage engine. We've begun the throttle down in preparation for stage separation.
2 Alpha.
Stage separation confirmed.
And you see that stage separation has confirmed. There goes that MVAC engine. Stage 2, Crew-1 is now on their way to the International Space Station. On the right side of your screen, you see Stage 2 continuing to burn. Over on the left-hand side is Stage 1 preparing for its return to Earth.
Currently on the left side, you can't make out much. It's a couple hours after sunset in Florida, but the grid fins have deployed on the first stage. The first stage is now unpowered, but with the velocity it had, it continues to coast up to an apogee before it begins to descend back into Earth's atmosphere. Now, as we watch, maybe we'll see the lights of Florida or the eastern seaboard in the background, but otherwise there's not going to be much to see. On the right-hand side,
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
you can hear the call out. Trajectory is nominal.
Nominal trajectory.
And we've heard the call out Bermuda. That means Bermuda ground station has the signals from the second stage of the Dragon and Falcon 9.
We're still continuing as Stage 2 burns to listen for those abort zones. We are now in 2A through 2E to Echo, taking us up over the northern Atlantic.
Right now you can see the second stage engine glowing with the standard red that we have come to see over all these missions. Indicates everything's looking good. Power on the MVAC-D engine continues to run at 220,000 pounds of thrust in the vacuum of outer space.
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
And trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
And we hear the reply from the crew acknowledging we have a nominal trajectory. Dragon made it to the Falcon 9 second stage, heading into the low Earth orbit, where Dragon will then separate and begin its trip the rest of the way to the space station.
We'll be looking for SECO, second stage engine cutoff, coming up at 8 minutes and 48 seconds after launch today. So about 3.5 minutes from now, Dragon and Falcon 9, second stage, currently flying 2,979 meters per second.
Now currently the first stage has begun its descent. It is through apogee. It's beginning to come back down where it coming up in another couple of minutes, we will have the entry burn where we begin to slow down the
Dragon,
first stage.
SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
Another call out, another nominal trajectory, just what we love to hear.
That voice you're hearing on board Dragon, that's Commander Mike Hopkins, speaking for our 4-person crew as they continue their journey now 6 minutes and 12 seconds after liftoff. Trajectory still nominal.
And Leah, you can see on the indicator altitude, 201 kilometers. We're now beginning to essentially level out and pick up velocity to get us into low Earth orbit. We're a little under 1 minute from the ignition for the entry burn on first stage.
And we're about 2 minutes away.
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
Great news, now 7 minutes after launch. Second stage engine continues to burn, everything looking good. And we'll see that continue to burn for another 1 minute and about 38 seconds.
Right now on stage 2, the crew's getting about a little more than 2.5 G's of acceleration. First stage preparing to ignite for the entry
Stage 2
burn.
FTS has saved.
And we've got ignition of the entry burn, center engine, followed by the other 2 restart engines. First stage now getting ready to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. This is about a 29-second burn, and it's designed to slow the vehicle way down. We're going to shed about 70% of the velocity of that dropping first stage by the time this landing burn completes. I should say by the time the entry burn completes, which is now over. First stage on target for the drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean. Meanwhile, we're watching second stage getting close to getting into orbit.
That's right. We've got about 30
Stage
seconds
2
more.
internal guidance.
And now just about 20 seconds more of stage 2 continuing to burn until we see second stage engine cutoff, or SECO. We'll coast for a few minutes afterward to allow the rates in motion
Shannon.
Roger,
there-
Shannon.
There's that call for Shannon. That's Shannon, Ireland, an abort zone, but it looks like we continue smoothly to orbit today.
MVAC shutdown.
And we've got shutdown of the second stage engine on time.
Dragon SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
Launch escape system is disarmed.
And SpaceX copies.
And Leah, the words we like to hear, a nominal orbit insertion.
That's right, John. Nominal orbit insertion, as we mentioned, stage 2. Oh, looks like some action on stage 1. And I believe we've had a touchdown on the drone ship.
We've got stage 1 has touched down on the drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean. But now the more important news, second stage is in orbit, right where we want, right on time. And we're getting ready for our next major activity, which will be Dragon spacecraft separation. Now currently on the second stage, we are essentially venting pressure, purging the engine out, making sure everything is quiet in preparation.
Take a look. That's inside Crew Dragon right now. Our Crew-1 crew now coasting in low Earth orbit, still attached to that second stage. In just a couple of minutes, we should see that second stage separate, and Crew Dragon will be flying free.
Leah, the mission timer shows 90 seconds to Dragon separation.
Currently, Dragon is flying at 27,000 kilometers an hour. And we're T plus 11 minutes since liftoff today, waiting on that second stage separation. But as you can see, our astronauts from left to right, Shannon Walker, Victor Glover, Mike Hopkins, and Soichi Noguchi, now on their way to the International Space Station. First trip to space for Victor Glover.
Acquisition of signal, Newfoundland.
And that call out, acquisition of signal in Newfoundland. That means the Newfoundland ground station is now receiving telemetry from Dragon. This view inside Mission Control Hawthorne. Teams continuing to monitor the vehicle, now traveling at almost 27,000 kilometers an hour.
Ten seconds to Dragon separation.
Dragon separation confirmed.
And separation confirmed. You can see that second stage departing. Crew Dragon leaving it behind.
Separation confirmed.
Now 12 minutes, 25 seconds into today's flight. Our next thing we'll be looking for is nose cone deploy. Our hooks will start to open on the nose cone and reveal those forward thrusters underneath. 13 minutes into today's mission. The view on the right-hand side of your screen coming from Crew Dragon. We had that short look at the second stage as it departed. That second stage will burn up upon re-entry into Earth's atmosphere.
Dragon SpaceX, we see nominal service section Draco checkouts and the humidifier activation.
And SpaceX, this is Dragon. We copy all and we see the same.
Confirmation from teams on the ground and the crew. You can see them monitoring those 3 display panels, monitoring their journey to the International Space Station and where they are in the world right now, or over the world, I should say.